Hello fellow gamers, this is newcomer to YouTube, RenewedSpark, known to some as MasterLink55. Here it is, the moment you've all, well, some of you have been waiting for. Welcome to the first episode of my show, where I rant and rave about video games, good or bad. The first game I will be discussing is a classic handheld title that will forever mean the world to me. That game is Pokemon Red. Problem? I'm sure most of you at least have a general idea of what Pokemon is. It originated as a pair of Game Boy games in Japan, and of course later brought here to America. The creator of Pokemon was a bug collector as a child. He took this childhood hobby of his and expanded it into a revolutionary idea. That idea became two Game Boy games known as Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue. Your quest primarily involves a young boy whose goal is to collect and raise powerful creatures known as Pokemon. You begin your adventure with no Pokemon in your disposal, but you meet a professor named Oak. He shows you 3 Pokemon that he owns, and out of the kindness of his heart, he decides to give you one. You're allowed to choose between Squirtle, which is a water type, Charmander, a fire type, and Bulbasaur, which is a plant type. In my honest opinion, Squirtle is the easiest Pokemon to raise throughout the adventure, especially because you can practically rape the first boss, along with most other Pokemon that you run into throughout your adventure. Charmander, though, is definitely my personal favorite starter, but I'll explain why later. After choosing your starter Pokemon, Professor Oak's asshole of a grandson challenges you to a battle. This one-on-one battle isn't very thrilling, it's not even your first time, but it gives the player a general idea of how the combat system works. Pokemon plays like any other turn-based RPG, like Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest. You can have a group of 6 Pokemon with you at once, and each Pokemon can only learn up to 4 moves. You click on which move you like your Pokemon to perform and watch as it does it. Most moves will cause damage to the opposing Pokemon, lowering its HP level. If a Pokemon's HP level reaches 0, it faints. Faints? I just like to say it dies. The first player to lose all 6 of their Pokemon will lose the battle. The more a Pokemon wins battles, the more experience points it gains. Racking up enough experience points will level up your Pokemon, raising its stats such as HP level and attack power. Your Pokemon will also learn new moves, so you must think carefully which old moves you need to overwrite to make room for new ones, or hell, cancel out the new move if you don't want to change what you currently have. Also, depending on the Pokemon, when it reaches a certain level, it evolves into a new Pokemon. This is why Charmander is my personal favorite. He eventually evolves into Charmeleon and later evolves again into Charizard, who is pretty badass. The most crucial thing to remember when battling is a vast majority of Pokemon represent their own certain elements. These elements ultimately determine its strengths and weaknesses. For example, Squirtle, a water-type Pokemon, can cause massive damage if he uses a water-type attack on a fire or rock Pokemon, but if Squirtle is hit by a plant or electric-type attack, he'll get hurt pretty damn badly. Anyway, after your first battle with Assface, you run a couple of errands, then the professor tells you his dream of catching all the Pokemon in the world. Unfortunately, he's now too old to fulfill that dream, so he needs a young pigeon to go out and do it for him. What do you get paid for doing this enormous favor for him? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Anyway, as you venture out into the wild, you run through tall grass, and wild Pokemon will randomly pop up and battle you. In order to catch a wild Pokemon, you must first damage it until its HP is about 10 to 20%. Then you throw an item called a Pokeball. The Pokemon will shake inside the ball trying to free itself, but if you're lucky enough, the Pokemon will stay locked inside the ball and is forever yours to keep. I forgot to mention that it also helps for you to change the Pokemon status. It's like you can use certain attacks, like if you can poison it or burn it, that'll increase your chance of catching it. I personally love this method of adding new members to your party compared to other standard turn-based RPGs, where you had to play the game for hours before meeting your favorite badasses. You also run into other trainers on your quest. When they spot you, they challenge you to a battle, although most of them are pushovers. The bosses in this game are gym leaders who have their own gyms in certain towns. When you defeat one, you earn a badge. Collect all 8 of the badges and you'll open the gateway to the final battle against the Elite Four, which is it's a group of 4 badasses. Don't really want to spoil any more than that. I'll let you play the game for itself. There's a few extra surprises in store for you. The absolute best thing about Pokemon is its multiplayer modes. You can link 2 Game Boys together and trade and battle Pokemon with your best pals, or enemies. Pokemon Red and Blue each have their own exclusive creatures that only appear depending on the version you're playing, so trading with a friend is required if you wish to catch them all. Battling your friend isn't required for completing the game 100%, but to me it's the most fun you'll have with this series. To me, this was always my personal hook. I'd put up with the single player quests mainly to become stronger than my friends I went to school with, and even some family members at home challenge me occasionally. As you play Pokemon, you can't help but feel a connection with your Pokemon that you're raising. After beating the primary single player quest, you're not really left with anything else to do but multiplayer. You feel the constant desire to become stronger and learn all of the best moves so that no one will be able to take you down. This desire for power is one of many reasons Pokemon will forever be one of my favorite handheld video games of all time. Pokemon Blue and Red were so successful, they made an anime series which is also a major hit here and in Japan, although the anime series isn't really my cup of tea personally. There's also numerous sequels, spin-offs, and remakes across all major handheld Nintendo titles such as Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS. And there's also console video games like Pokemon Stadium and Coliseum, where you can actually link up your handheld Pokemon and see them on the TV in 3D. This is absolutely mind-blowing, but at the same time, it can get quite expensive to buy the extra equipment needed for this, such as transfer cables for a Nintendo 64 and whatnot. I know a lot of you are too wrapped up with current console and PC games today, and that's perfectly fine. But I also know damn well that some of you have DSs and 3DSs in your homes. I highly recommend you at least try a Pokemon game. It doesn't necessarily have to be these classic Game Boy games I just ranted about. Any Pokemon game with a color in its title is absolutely worth your time. So why did I just rant about Pokemon Red? A game which is pretty much ancient history now? Because to me, it is the one that started it all. It is the first Game Boy game that has truly consumed the vast majority of my childhood hours. And to this day, it means everything to me. I absolutely have no shame in saying I will forever be a fan of the Pokemon video game series. Your best bet at this point is to check out Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green for Game Boy Advance, which are enhanced remakes with extra bells and whistles, better graphics and sounds, and other neat things. If you have a friend who's also into Pokemon, and you happen to have the appropriate system to join this person, don't hesitate. You're never too old to dive into the world of Pokemon. This is RenewedSpark, signing off.